Hi, everybody. Thought I would get on here today and talk about why I think growing your own food and being more connected to your food is so important, and why it's so important to me, and how it has evolved into I would call it an obsession that I have now. My poor friends and family definitely would probably call it an obsession. It kind of goes back to when I was a child. My grandfather had a garden. It was about a 30 by 30 foot plot behind his garage. And there's just photos of me, even as a baby, sitting in front of the garden. And I distinctly remember and have lots of memories of picking tomatoes and picking green beans and pulling radishes out of the ground and harvesting cucumbers and harvesting zucchini. And I remember in my teens convincing my grandpa to grow peppers finally, because he was so determined just to grow what he knew how to grow. And I'm not sure if it's just things that his mother grew or what, but those were his staples. And even recently I've convinced him to start growing his own potatoes, because our family is a potato family. I'm like, I don't understand why you haven't grown these before. And he grew them last year in 2025, and his harvest was better than mine, which I was like, okay, fine, whatever. And he didn't share them either, which I'm like, thanks, I guess. But it started with him having that garden. And I remember when I bought my home, I was 23, and I thought, the first thing I want to do, the first summer, I want to put a garden in. And I had done a very small amount of research, and the connection to the food wasn't really what it is now. The connection to the food was just wanting to learn how to do something, wanting to be able to do something with my own hands and be productive in that way. And I knew that it was good for my body and good for my mind, and just in general. I think I've always struggled a little bit with like anxiety and purpose and things like that. And I knew that gardening would be a really nice way to like channel that energy into it. And so my first garden was really small. It was two raised beds, 6 foot by 10 foot each, and about, I think they're 10 inches tall at the time. They're small, and I grew the staples. I grew what I knew. I grew tomatoes, cucumber, zucchini, radish, green bean. I think that's it. I think that's all I grew. And it kind of started this obsession very slowly, I would say, because I found out very quickly that it came naturally to me, how to pay attention to the plants, what to look for. And I say it came naturally, meaning like, obviously I'm sure I learned or picked up something from my grandfather along the way. But it did. It was very, and I hate saying that, but it was very easy to grow those things. And I thought, well, if I can grow these things, I can grow more for sure. And the next year or I think that fall actually, maybe the following fall, I don't know, I decided to grow garlic for the first time. And I ordered garlic online. I had seen, at that point I had found a lot of other gardeners on YouTube and Instagram, and I was inspired. And some of them were local, but not many. Not many people were local to me. I'm in Michigan, and I was really curious what I could grow, even though I was watching gardeners in California and Florida, different other parts of the Midwest, but different regions, different zones, I guess you could say. And I was like, I'm gonna try the garlic thing. That sounds like a good idea. And then the garlic was very successful. The following year, I harvested the garlic, and I think I only harvested like 16 to 20 bulbs, maybe. And it was very successful. And I realized that I could do that again and again and never have to buy garlic again from a store. Because I also went down a lot of Reddit rabbit holes and YouTube rabbit holes on preservation and curing and keeping your food that you grew throughout your growing season, throughout the fall and winter and into the next spring, to sustain yourself. And I think that's where the obsession really started to grow was the garlic. It was a Kickstarter for sure, because I realized, oh, there's got to be more than just garlic I can do this with. I could probably do this with onions too, and I could probably do this with a lot of things. And I started looking up freezer recipes because I was too intimidated to can. And that is where I got to making frozen tomato sauce, which is still a staple in my home. One of my favorite things to do. It's so easy. It takes absolutely no time. I can process, 20 pounds of tomatoes in an afternoon, 30 pounds of tomatoes in an afternoon. Makes it really easy. And then I got into growing potatoes. And as you can imagine, my garden space expanded tremendously. I added another 2 beds. I added a trellis between the first 2 beds. And I started adding, I added raspberries. I made like a patch of raspberries in a corner of my yard. And in front of that patch, I made a 16-foot by 6-foot potato patch. And I started learning different methods on how best to grow things, how to get higher yields. And I wanted to learn how to cure things or keep them so that I could eat them throughout the entire winter and not just hurry up and have to process them or hurry up and have to eat them or give them away to people, because that's such a common thing with gardeners. It's, everyone's like, oh, I have too many tomatoes, I have too many zucchini, especially zucchini, I have too many cucumbers, things like that. And I love that. I think that the spirit of sharing when it comes to gardening is amazing and beautiful, but we also are losing a skill that prior generations had of saving and preserving the harvests. And I really got into that. I really wanted to understand that. And I don't have a root cellar. I don't have, any like underground thing. I just have a basement. So I had to figure out how to make that work and how to save as much as I could. At a certain point, I did get chickens. I feel like that's the natural evolution of somebody who loves to garden and grow their own food. It's just like you have a garden and you get chickens. And I started with 5 chickens, and they really taught me a lot about respecting where our food comes from. It really put things into perspective for me. I was raising 5 living beings and benefiting from their output, the eggs, obviously. And it made me realize that these 5 things in my backyard are the reason that I have breakfast every single day. I didn't have to question if there was going to be breakfast. And even with eggs, you can preserve eggs. You can keep them for, up to a year, I think, or maybe it's 2 years with the lime. But regardless, I started realizing that this is more normal this feels more normal and more natural, and it connects to me. It connects to something inside of me that going to the grocery store doesn't. Going to the grocery store feels overwhelming. It feels jarring. It feels, there's way too many products for one. And I usually was a person who really just shopped the perimeter of the store. I especially only shop the perimeter of the store now, but occasionally, just based on how I grew up, I would crave some of that packaged stuff. And over the course of the last, let's say, decade and a half that I have been buying my own groceries, I've noticed that the food has become less and less food and more a version of a food, especially corn, especially soy. Corn is crazy. The way that they transform corn into 40 different ingredients, 40 different types of things, sugars, just whatever they can use to make that food last as long as humanly possible on a shelf. And just, all the other preservatives, obviously, that are in our foods. And I started to get more and more disgusted, I guess you could say, frustrated with it. And that, I think, was the turning point when I realized I need to grow. And need, obviously, is, we don't need to do that, but I personally, in my soul, need to grow as much food as I possibly can. I need to provide my family with as much as I possibly can and avoid the grocery store, and especially avoid the center of the grocery store. And it's moved into me growing microgreens and getting more chickens. I started with 5, I have 16 now. My garden is, now I have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 beds, 10 garden beds, and 2 arches, and another patch over here, and a blackberry patch, and I've added fruit trees because I want to be connected. I want to be connected to the food that I'm eating, and there's something so fulfilling about it. Obviously, it is a full-time job. Obviously, it is a lot of work, and there's a lot of knowledge now packed into my brain of how to do all of this and how to grow everything and where to place everything and understanding the sunshine and the rain. And I mean, even, now I collect rainwater, and I make my own bread. I just want to be more and more connected, and I want there to be less and less bullshit in my food. And I think a lot of people feel the same way based on talking to people and communicating with my friends and just being approached by people too, because I share so much of it online. I think more and more people want that, want to be connected to it, want to feel connected to it. And so I hope maybe the next decade or decade and a half, instead of eating more and more fake food, we get connected back to the earth, and we get connected back to our food, and we get connected back to each other through that food. That's a huge hope of mine, that we reconnect at the table, and we reconnect in the garden, and we share with each other. One of my favorite artists, oh God, I'm gonna blank on her name now. One of my favorite artists has a piece that is so simple, and I quote it all the time. I quote it constantly. It is something that lives in my mind ever since I saw it, and it is just a poster that says, "There is enough if we share." And it says it over and over and over and over again, and then it is bold at the bottom. And I think that that's so, so true. And hopefully we can create that community and share, and then we can give less money to the grocery stores, because I've kind of developed a deep hatred for them too. But that's all. I just wanted to share that, and maybe I'll find more people that are like me. And yeah, if you like this kind of thing, if you like this kind of chat, let me know. Got a lot more thoughts around the topic, but yeah, thanks for watching.